Hello, everybody. Welcome to Crush2Cellar webinar series. Crush2Cellar is the one-stop shop for all your winery needs, for the small to very large wineries. We are located in Newberg, Oregon, in the heart of the Willamette Valley, and we are serving the wineries in Oregon in every state for the past 6 years. We are sharing our building with the most reputable and accurate wine laboratory in the nation, ETS Laboratory. Crush2Cellar carry all the major brands for your everyday winemaking protocol and procedure. We sell fermentation product, yeast, nutrients, enzyme, bacteria, fining agents, stability agent, bulk chemical, packaging product, natural cork, tin capsules, screw caps, crown cap, beetles, filtration product as well. So barrels, alternative product, hardware, and we're proud of that. The valves, the pumps, small equipment, tank, kegs, hoses, racking equipment. By the way, it's a good time to fix your hoses before harvest. Don't wait the last minute because we are always, slammed just the day of harvest with people bring broken hose or old hose to fix. So if you have hoses to check them now and bring them to Tyler and Terry. They will be happy to work on them. We also do a lot of lab equipment, little glassware, and we carry Hanna Instruments, pH meter and other instrument there. So my name is Sebastien Marquet. I'm commercial director and your host today. And let me introduce you to our guest, Shayla Franks, Foods and Beverage Segment Leader at Hanna Instruments. Shayla, welcome.
Thanks, Sebastian. I'm so excited to be working with your team, you, Terry, Kaylee, everyone has just been so welcoming. So really excited to be part of this. So just a little bit about who I am. So I am as Sebastian said, the food and beverage segment leader for Hanna Instruments. I started with Hanna in 2015, and I've had a couple different hats over the years. I was an applications engineer, so I would go out and actually consult with wineries and do in-house testing for titration and pH. But then I moved back into sales. So I handle all of, any questions that you all have, happy to answer those. So that's a little bit who I am.
Okay, so we'll be talking about Hanna Instruments, more specifically about the 901W piece of equipment, not only this one, but the good practice of wine testing. We'll be also talk about the common methodology questions, how to prepare your instrument for crush and how you get ready for all that. And very important, this afternoon, we are doing a demo from the 901W equipment specifically on site at Crush2Cellar. So you are very welcome to come and bring some samples of wine and bring some samples of what you would like to taste. And Shayla will be showing you the instrument and describe a little bit more in detail how that works. And you will be able to see it, touch it, and play with it. So if you have any question during the webinar, please feel free to write them on the Q&A sections. And I will be happy to ask Shayla the answers to the questions. If it's relevant to what we are talking now, I will ask them during the conversation. If it's a little different or something else, I will ask them at the end of the questions. So same techniques than usual. We work on a series of questions, and usually I do 10 questions. Here we will have a little more questions, but I think we have a lot to share. So it's all good. The idea is to be fast on the answer, not fast on the answer, but we don't like the 2 hours webinar, so it would be 30 to 45, maybe 50 minutes webinar, and we can start now. Great. So Shayla, could you tell us a little bit more about Hanna Instruments first?
Absolutely. So Hanna Instruments is the largest privately held manufacturer of analytical instrumentation. We have over 40 offices worldwide, and we offer solutions to a number of industries. So not only wine, beer, aquarium, agriculture, you name it, chemical manufacturing. So across 15 different industries, we make a lot of different products. But food and wine has really always been one of our true focuses, and we always like to gear our products towards these focus markets. So we've been designing instruments specific to the wine industry for over 20 years, I'd say at this point. So really taking the challenges and the needs of the winemaker or of the brewer, and taking those to heart and building up a solution around those needs.
Well, we see your brand very often all over. So I know you are well known in the industry, and your blue logo is not unknown to the winemakers.
Well, I
So
have my Hanna blue shirt on today, so you can come see the blue logo in person.
there are a lot of technology suppliers to the wine industry. Could you speak to what differentiates you with the others?
Yeah, sure. So as I alluded to, we really have a dedication to our customer and the ultimate customer experience. So no matter if a product is purchased directly through Hanna or at your local supplier like Crush2Cellar, I always encourage customers to shop locally. But even if you buy your product at Crush2Cellar, you still have access to all the resources of working with Hanna Instruments. So our blogs, our tutorials, videos, SOPs. We have technical support. We have application support. So really your go-to person is always going to be your local store, but you do have us as a secondary backup for any questions or needs. And Crush2Cellar does have access to our full line of wine products. So we're really excited to be working with them in that capacity. So apart from that, what else differentiates us is that we, again, took the feedback from the industry and we designed our electrodes to handle the inherent challenges that come with testing wine. So if, for example, in a sample with high solids like a must, sometimes that can clog the electrode, and then you have a shortened lifespan of the electrode, which would increase your costs and frustration among operators. So by using an electrode that's really designed to combat some of those interferences, using a high flow rate, using a sleeve junction, which we have that electrode on demonstration today in the store, you're really going to reduce the erratic readings, you're going to reduce any clogging, and you're really going to be able to maximize the investment of one electrode, right? So you want to spend the least amount of money as possible. So using the right one to begin with is going to cause you definitely less hassle in the end. So where we shine is really those application specific products. We know wine, we do wine very well.
Okay, so you have a lot of products, quite a number of products. Could you tell us some of your favorites for the wine industry?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I love a lot of instruments. So let's start. I guess we can start with pH. So Edge, let's talk about the Edge. This is an all-time wine customer favorite. It comes specifically with a wine electrode. So as I was mentioning, this has a sleeve junction that is movable, so you're able to clean it. It has a high flow rate to provide stable readings in your samples that have those high solids. So really dedicated to wine. In addition, this Edge meter, which we have a display model at the store for you to see. In addition to being able to do pH, you actually can just buy an additional electrode to take electrical conductivity measurements. And where electrical conductivity is important is you can measure cold stability through the measurement of electrical conductivity. In addition to conductivity, you can also adapt it with a dissolved oxygen electrode. So our electrodes are designed prior to fermentation to measure the DO levels, but it's really an instrument that is a great price point and has a lot of expandability in terms of the parameters at which it can offer. So we also have on display today is our new wine tester. And this is a portable wine tester, again, with that application specific electrode. And this is a very accurate tester for under $100. And so this is really becoming a quick favorite for any spot checks throughout the winery. Customers are like really, really enjoying this product. So we are actually going to be raffling off 3 of these products in store today. So please come down to Crush2Cellar. We're going to have 3 of those to give away.
That's cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Can I play? Can I be part of it?
I mean, we can probably arrange just to get you one.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's not deprive the customers, right?
So let's talk about pH. it's one of the most critical tasting parameter through the winemaking process, from the beginning of juice and to the finished product. So, do you have any advice on pH best and practice in winemaking?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always about choosing the right tool for the job. So I already talked about the application specific electrode, but the meter capability is also important. So when you're calibrating a pH meter, you always want to bracket your range. So if you're measuring, typically wine is mid threes, so 3.5, say. If you just calibrate with 4 and 7, you're not really bracketing the range of your expected concentration. So the instrument has no way of interpreting that slope. So I would choose a meter that allows you to calibrate with a buffer that's lower than 3.5. So a 3 buffer or even a 1.68 buffer. So it's important to choose the right meter. Definitely important to choose the right electrode. And then, it's definitely a critical process. It's critical throughout the wine process in terms of stability. So low pH environments are typically less tolerable for microorganisms. So the effective pH is important in sulfur dioxide. So sulfur dioxide can take a couple different forms, and the form that is most effective is selected by adjusting the pH. So definitely a couple of really important reasons for measuring pH. Yeah, so that's about pH.
Well, that's good. It's good. A lot of people often are under the assumption that pH and titratable acidity are measuring the same thing. Could you offer any insight as the differences between these two measurements and the application for each, pH and titratable acidity?
Sure. So pH is really just how acidic or how basic something is. So it's a scale from 0 to 14 that just is telling you if a sample is acidic or basic. When we talk about titratable acidity is more how much acid is present. So pH will again be able to tell you, where the SO2 form is going to take place. So it regulates the SO2 form. It does protect against, it protects against microbes, but acidity has a better sense of the overall taste of the wine. So if it's going to have that tart taste to it, that's better. TA is usually a better indicator of that like flavor profile. So that's the way I think of it. pH is like stability and like adjustments, and then titratable acidity is like the flavor of the wine.
Well, they go to pair, but depending the weather conditions of soil or type of soil, they can be sometimes be very different. We see in many cases some high pH and also high acids in certain cases with TA, higher TA. So it is important to monitor both of them to make sure that you have good practice and your wine can be stable and age longer as well.
And we get a lot of questions like, can you infer one from the other? And no, not really. Like there's no universal like correction factor you can apply to say, okay, this is by measuring the pH, you can apply this correction factor to get acidity. It just doesn't exist. It would take, if you want to do the R&D work, maybe I'll help you with that, but it doesn't really exist.
You mentioned that you have a couple of different models of titrator for the wine industry. Why would someone choose one or the other?
Okay, so we have our mini titrators, and those have been an industry favorite for a long, long time. And I like to think of those as like a starter titrator. So they're typically geared towards very small wineries or hobbyists, people who are really just getting their feet wet and want a more accurate way of testing, opposed to doing like the manual titrations. So it's really that great first step. The reagents are specific to that titrator, so you do have to buy the specific reagents. So and there is a pump calibration procedure that is required in order to keep that accurate. So it's a little bit to maintain, and again, you have very specific reagents. The application for those mini titrators are also very specific. They are intended for red wines mostly, but they can be adapted for some samples. But we have had challenges in the past with all samples. So to guarantee your sample would work within the parameters of the instrument, you would want to step up into something like a 901W because at that unit, now everything is fully customizable. You can change the dosing settings, you can change the concentrations of the titrant. You can really, find that perfect blend of accuracy and speed and program that into the instrument. So the 901 also can do a lot more parameters than just, one. A mini titrator is just, it's the titratable acidity model or the SO2 model. 901 can be adapted for SO2, free and total, titratable acidity, YAN or formal number, reducing sugars, volatile acidity, as long as you have like the cash still. So it's very versatile compared to like the individual models.
Okay, we have a question. I love my H meter. That is the first sentence of a question. Since TF titration uses pH of 8.2, should I be calibrating using 3 and 10 buffer solution, or is calibrating using a 7 buffer solution at the top and adequate?
I would recommend on the edge, I would do a 3, a 7, and a 10. That would be my recommendation for the most. That's going to give you the full scope of that line. And the reason why a 7 is important is because that gives you the offset value. It's right in the middle. It really gives you the shape of that line. So honestly, for the most accurate results, I would definitely use a 3, a 7, and a 10. If you have any other questions, just certainly let me know.
Yes, so we'll see. And so question 7, why should listener consider making the switch from a manual titration?
Yeah, absolutely. So manual titrations, they are quick, right? TA titration is pretty quick, but the problem comes with that color change a lot of times, right? So especially in red wine, that phenolphthalein endpoint can be pretty tough to detect. And so you get a lot of arguments. It's funny, I've had husbands and wives argue over titration. It's like almost like a, when they go to upgrade to a real tit, they're like, what's the real number? And like they argue over like whose numbers were more correct. So yeah, you have that inherent subjectivity to the manual titrations, whereas you have a very precise automated dosing system on an automated titrator. You have customizable settings that again are going to allow for precise endpoint detection. Completely takes the subjectivity out of it. So no matter who's using it, you're going to, as long as they're measuring out the sample correctly, you're going to get the same result, whether it's me or you measuring it. So it just really increases not only the accuracy, but the reproducibility of your results between operators.
Yeah, that is the biggest challenge to the manual titration. Is to read the color and be consistent between the people who are using the burette. So that is definitively the challenge.
Yeah.
So what are the costs of running tests on your titrator?
Oh, let me think. I have my notes here for this one. Okay, so for the mini titrators, you do have that pump calibration procedure, and that costs about $1.10 per pump calibration, and then it's basically 70 cents per titratable acidity, $1.10 a test per free SO2, $1.70 for total SO2. So pretty inexpensive compared to constantly sending them out. I always recommend, if you are going to do in-house testing, it's always great to still verify your results with with ETS laboratories or some, a credible, testing source, just to make sure your procedure is accurate. But then on the 901, you're reducing your test down to, so there's no pump calibration, so $1.10 is taken off. It's 50 cents per titratable acidity test, 60 cents per free SO2 test, and $1.10 per total SO2 test. So There are maintenance costs associated with both of them. You want to keep on top of your electrodes. You want to make sure your tubing is in good order. But I would say for high throughput, it's definitely going to be more advantageous if you're doing a lot of samples to invest in the 901 because you're going to get your ROI basically back in the difference in chemical costs because you have to use the same mini titrator reagents. And it's just the generic Hanna Instruments titrants are a little less expensive.
So you have recurring maintenance costs with ownership of this instrument. Every 6 months you have to change the pump or the hoses, or once a year, or depend how many samples I assume you run per year as well through your instrument. So do you recommend like something specific?
Yeah, so on the 901, I do recommend changing the titrant tubes, so both the aspiration tube and the dispensing tube, as well as the syringe inside, especially if you're running titratable acidity, because the syringe is glass, as they are on all like automated titrators. But sodium hydroxide actually eats away the glass. So if you're constantly exposing it to sodium hydroxide, which is the titrant used for titratable acidity, you're going to wear out that syringe within a year. So you really want to definitely replace that at the year mark. On the mini titrator, you're still going to want to replace the syringe and tubing. I would say probably every 6 months on the mini titrator, but I think on the full scale titrator, you could get away. Most people do it around the year, but you always want to be, cognizant if there's any red flags. Hey, if you see something leaking, like stop, evaluate like what's going on and don't just continue to use an instrument until you figure out the cause of the leak, because you can cause, more damage by continuing use.
Okay. We have customer measuring sulfite with both the Reaper method and the aeration oxidation method. Could you speak to the differences between this method and the result generated?
Yep. So there are two methods, and not just between the aeration, oxidation, and the Ripper, but whenever you're comparing two methodologies, you can always expect some kind of inherent difference between them, because if they're using a different chemistry, each methodology is going to have its own inherent interferences. So some methods may be easier to use, but are like less sensitive and more prone to interferences, and they're good for like qualitative measurements. And then some instruments or some methodologies or technologies are a little slower, but they're more accurate or they're more specific to what you're looking for. So it's really about deciding which is good enough for me. What is good enough. So the aeration oxidation, it is prone to less interferences. So I would say, it's the more accurate of the two, but it does involve, there is a distillation process that happens before you run the titration. So our titrators can do the titration, but you still have that sample preparation step before the titration. So you do have about a 20-minute, or it can take probably half an hour to run that. Free SO2 using the Ripper method, it is prone to more interferences. Sometimes from the pigments in the wine. There's other things that are going to react with the titrant. So you do have a couple more interferences. And I've seen studies that they may be, say, 10% apart from one another in times. But the Ripper method takes 5 minutes to run a test versus 30. So what do you value more? Is it the accuracy or is it the speed? And then you have a more of an investment, obviously, with the aeration oxidation, because you have that additional technology that you need.
Thank you. We have customers who are looking to specifically measure malic acid as part of a malolactic fermentation process. Can that be done on the titrator as well?
So that's interesting. So we know that there's a couple different organic acids that are present in wine, right? So you have tartaric acid, you have malic acid, succinic, lactic, acetic at times, right? And all of these are weak organic acids. So they're all going to react in a very similar way when we're doing a titratable acidity analysis. We're using the sodium hydroxide to determine that acidity. So they all kind of look the same, and they're all going to be kind of lumped in together. And what you do when you measure titratable acidity is you just report as the predominant acid. So a lot of times it'll be reported as tartaric in the case of wine. So not titration, you really can't differentiate, but they do make enzymatic assays. So you can go on like Megazyme or NZY Tech, as I know is another distributor, and they sell assays for specific organic acids. So they do have a lactic acid one, and they do have a malic acid one. And these assay kits can be used on a spectrophotometer, and we do sell a spectrophotometer. We do not sell the enzymes, but you can purchase, the enzymes as long as they're within the range of our spectrophotometer. You can use our spec, but they are a little bit, they require some good laboratory technique in order to get them accurate, to be accurate. But for those of you who want to, get that specific results in-house, I would recommend, the enzymatic assay with a spectrophotometer.
Okay. Are there any tips you could provide as to get your instrumentation ready for the season? And as a follow-up to that, how can user best store instrument in between frequent testing periods?
Good question. So whenever you're getting ready to start the season, it's always important to do an inventory, an inventory check. And I would recommend doing an inventory check, like not when it's not when you're just about to start testing, because every other winemaker in America, I promise you, is doing the exact same thing as you are.
It's like the hose.
It's like the hoses. I promise you. So by doing your inventory early, you're secure, your stock. These chemicals are not going to go bad in the time you order they have a lot of them have a 5-year expiration date. So please, here's my public service announcement: do your inventory early. So check your stock. Make sure you're not going to use any expired chemicals. Make sure there's nothing that's opened. Even if it has an expiration date, once you open a chemical, there's a general rule of thumb: 6 months you should discard that chemical, right? Because that chemical can change concentration over time due to subjector to the atmosphere. So you have the list of chemicals. I would definitely go through those. In addition to that, look at your electrodes. So we can talk about, if you want to come in today, I have a list of pH best practices I can give you, and you want to slope check your electrodes to see, okay, how healthy is my electrode? Is it going to make it through the season? Also, do you have a backup electrode? So if your electrode happens, someone drops it on the ground, are you going to be without? I would suggest everyone have a backup electrode prior to season, because it gives you some wiggle room if something was to happen and now you're not, trying to overnight things. Or, certainly the good news is you have your local Crush2Cellar, so you can just pick it up. But again, just don't waste the last minute to do it. So yeah, definitely go through that. In addition, if you do have one of our 901W titrators or even the mini, you want to make sure you're going to purge it of all chemicals. Like if you're going to go through like a period that you're not going to be using it a lot, rinse out the tubing, purge it with and rinse it with some deionized or distilled water, and then just kind of store the tubes empty and dry, just to keep everything clean. And again, if you do have any chemicals, make sure you're disposing of them correctly. So Hanna Instruments is not, a regulatory or agency, or we're not waste specialists. So if you ever have questions about how to dispose of a chemical, I would always recommend calling your regulatory agency that you're reporting to, because they're going to know better. It varies from state to state, city to city. So unfortunately, I don't know all of the recommendations.
Yes, and check your calibration with ETS lab. I think it's very important to make sure,
Yes.
Time to time, then you're on the good range of where you should be on your testing. That is also very, very important to remind everybody.
I mean, I'm very familiar with food safety plans, and in food safety, you should be scheduling, even if you do a test every day, you should be scheduling periodic validation checks. So, I mean, don't just do it once a year. Like, you should be ongoing. Like, if you're doing tests throughout the season, you should be ongoing checking batches, with a certified laboratory, just to make sure if it's, it's going to affect your overall budget if something goes wrong. It's going to affect your overall profit. So it's better to verify red flags than have a product that's not usable.
The good enough is not always good enough. So you want to make sure then you have accuracy, and when you produce wine, you have so much money involved with the making wine process. So it would be I think scary to not even consider to double check your analysis before any decision in winemaking and addition or any addition in your wine. How can listener purchase an instrument product? We know they can come to Crush2Cellar.
Yep. So again, I recommend building that local relationship because in the event you do have an emergency, they're the ones that are most likely going to get it to you faster. We do sell direct, but again, Crush2Cellar has direct access to whatever you need. So if it's a product that you don't see in the Crush2Cellar store, just let Terry know, and Terry will talk to me and we'll get it to you. So, Crush2Cellar really is your best bet.
Yes, and I want to add something. I've been traveling the United States and producing wine in California, East Coast, and now in Oregon I'm here. People in the Willamette Valley don't realize how lucky they are to have a store they can walk in. It's like the candy store for a winemaker. It doesn't exist anywhere else. On the East Coast, it doesn't exist. In Finger Lake, doesn't exist. In California, it doesn't exist. A store where you can come and get your different product from the different provider and vendors, and not only for one brand of yeast, but all the major brands of yeast and nutrients and bacteria. And so Terry have done such an incredible job to be able to retrieve all these different vendors and put them at one location where you can get every winemaking needs. It's pretty impressive, and now even C2C have all the packaging product, so natural corks and tin capsules and stelvin, and it's not like so it's the major brand again, so able to bring the strongest brand to the Willamette Valley, where people can come, touch and feel the product and see the valves, and it's pretty neat in the industry. So people are lucky here. This afternoon, I think we don't have much question now on my side. I don't know if anybody have additional questions. If you have, send them my way through the Q&A, and we'll be happy to ask Shayla. And also, you will be doing a demo this afternoon at Crush2Cellar. So I invite everybody who's close to us at Newburgh to swing by and come to the store. Can you tell us more about what will happen this afternoon?
Yes, certainly. So I'm so excited to be able to answer everyone's questions. So again, if you're a current Hanna user, come. If you have questions like, oh man, I always wish I could ask Hanna this, or I always wish I could give Hanna this piece of feedback, like absolutely come to the store to talk to me. We're going to be doing customer surveys, very short surveys. You get a chance to win a Hanna Instruments pH meter, and we're raffling off 3 of those. So again, even if you want to come down just for a chance to win something free, again, please come down to the store. We also have the 901W on display. We're going to be, again, if you have a sample of wine you want to try out on the unit, we'll be walking through 2 tests. We'll be walking through titratable acidity as well as free SO2. We can do total SO2 a little bit, but it takes a lot longer. So I mean, if there's a lot of people with samples, we might have to keep it to just free SO2. We can walk through YAN. We can walk through any of the other procedures that you have an interest in. We also have a refractometer available on site to play with. We have the wine tester that is being raffled off. We have those on display. The mini titrators, you can practice running SO2 titrations on the mini titrator and just answering any questions you have in general. So really, really excited to spend this time with you guys. And I really hope a lot of people show up.
Well, thank you very, very much, Shayla. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest at Crush2Cellar webinar series. I remind everybody that it's the one-stop shop for all your winery needs. And this webinar was recorded and will be stored on the Crush2Cellar website on the winemaker resources section webinar. So please go check it out or share the link with anybody who would be interested to get information about the Hanna Instruments. Shayla, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. And I look forward to seeing hopefully everyone this afternoon, 1 o'clock.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.